The South Carolina coaching search continues. Here we are again. It is November 17th, and we're already 2 days in to the South Carolina coaching search. Some things that I really wish a lot of you guys would stop caring about. A lot of my time that I spend responding to some of you is spent responding to things I wish you just didn't care about. Let me tell you what the three things are. The first thing, I really wish you'd stop caring about what the AP ranks your team, because the AP is totally irrelevant. I would argue they always have been, but now they really are. Forget about that. College Football Playoff Committee matters, AP doesn't. So stop worrying about it. And the first playoff committee rankings haven't even come out this year. Secondly, I really wish you guys didn't care about TV ratings. It doesn't matter how many people watched your game. It doesn't matter if more people watched Penn State, Michigan State than watched Clemson versus Georgia Tech. Doesn't matter. Did you watch the game? Did you enjoy it? It's all that matters. Quit worrying about TV ratings. And the third thing that I really wish people would stop caring so much about is what outsiders think of your program. The program doesn't belong to them. Someone sitting in a studio in Nashville, Tennessee, or Bristol, Connecticut, or Los Angeles, California, your program's not their program. Doesn't care. I don't care what they think about your program. You shouldn't care what they think about your program. The only opinions that really matter when it comes to your program are yours and the potential candidates out there, the suitors with which you're trying to attract using your program to the job. Those are the opinions that matter. The other ones, irrelevant. So if someone's out there telling you, South Carolinians right now, telling you, oh, your program's not what you think it is, who cares? Do you love your program? Yeah. Are you highly emotional? Yes, you are. Are you very much invested, almost to an unnatural degree? Yes. That's why we're allowed to do these kinds of shows, because there's that much passion out there. I'm not going to be the one who sits here in a studio and knocks that. I'm all for it. I'd be the exact same way you guys are. You think your job's the best one on the planet? Then it's the best one on the planet. Now let's talk about what kind of job it actually is as it pertains to the candidates that you're trying to vet right now and attract. I was on a radio show yesterday, and someone was asking me to compare the South Carolina job to the Clemson job, and I didn't really want to do it. I was kind of joking around back and forth, but I really don't want to do it. Number one, because it's irrelevant. To me, it's irrelevant. I think the whole Clemson-South Carolina comparison is really overblown, but they said, well, the reason I bring it up is because the Clemson program is night and day in a different stratosphere than South Carolina's. Maybe it is at this moment. What was it a decade ago? In fact, if we were to ask that same question a decade ago, South Carolina versus Clemson, better job, better program. I mean, it was very, very competitive at the very least. You would have had a 55-45 split either way nationally talking about that. So my point is, 10 years ago, if I would have told you in a decade, Clemson's going to be right there with the 2 or 3 elites in America, you would have said, that's crazy. They've never been that historically. That's what you would have said. That's the same thing that people are saying about Carolina right now. Carolina's not an elite job, which is factually correct at the moment, but then the addendum is, historically, they've never been that. That's also correct. How do you get history? You make history. That's the only way. Clemson wasn't what they are now until they were. All they had to change was everything about themselves, essentially. But the thing about it is, they made history. That's how you get history. That's how you fill the trophy case. You got to make history, then you get the history, then you can sell the history. At some point, everybody had no history. Florida State under Bobby Bowden, before Bowden got there, no history. Like, what was Miami prior to Schnellenberger and then the company after him that came in there? What were they? They were nothing. What was Clemson historically on the national landscape before Dabo Swinney did what he's done there? Really not much of anything to write home about. And so Carolina hasn't had that. They haven't had that period. I'm not going to be the one to say they can't do it. It certainly would shock the world if they were to be able to elevate that program to the top tier. All it takes is one right candidate. So now let's talk about the candidates. What's the very latest that we've heard here? I continue to encourage you. If you're a Carolina fan or you just have a passing interest in this, make sure you're dialed into thebigspur.com. I saw 15 different insider updates over there at various parts of Tuesday, if you're watching live today, about this coaching search, about vetting candidates, about what they're hearing at 3:10 p.m., at 4:45 p.m. They've probably posted something since we've gone on air. If it's happening and it's tangible and credible, you'll see it over there. And it's a great community. They have one of the most lively boards of any of the communities on 24/7 Sports. So the Big Spur, make sure you're tuned in there. Been reading it throughout the day. Also been texting back and forth with a couple of people that I know. You know the name that I don't hear as much, or at least haven't heard as much today. Now this varies. It comes in waves. Haven't heard the name Hugh Freeze a lot today. You're going to hear it externally. But as I always encourage you, if you're tuned into the subcurrent, the undercurrent rather, you'll be about 24 hours to 48 hours ahead of the national headlines. So the national headlines are really only just now hammering Hugh Freeze hardcore. Well, that's kind of a name, to me at least, that's gone a little quiet on this. The names that are right there in your face, though, are, of course, Billy Napier. I would view him probably as the leader in the clubhouse for this job right now. Still a little ways to go, okay? So I would view him as the leader in the clubhouse, but also Shane Beamer's a name that you're hearing a lot. I want to focus on those two names because of an added piece of criteria that I've added just to my own list here, along with the 3 bullet points that I gave out Sunday night. So there are these 2 words that, as I was doing yet another radio show, I feel like I've lived in South Carolina since Sunday, essentially. And there are worse places to live, believe me. But they feed you so well in South Carolina. That's why I say I'm really just a food guy. I've never left the state of South Carolina with my stomach growling. And so I was talking, and as I'm talking, I keep going back to these 2 words. And the 2 words are dream job. And so let me take you back to Sunday. Sunday night when we were talking about this job, and I said, hey, if I'm a Carolina fan and I'm looking for us to hit a grand slam, here's what I want to have. I want to have an offensive-minded coach. I know there's a train of thought out there that, well, if you narrow it down already, then you may limit yourself to some, you're putting the blinders on the horse. In other words, there may be a good candidate over here that's not necessarily what you would call an offensive mind. I know that, but this is my preference for the program. I've gone the other direction. I want an offensive-minded head coach. I want a very good recruiter, but I want a supremely gifted evaluator of talent, because I'm not necessarily going heads up with Georgia for every 4 and 5 star in the Southeast. I'm probably not equipped to do that from jump, maybe down the road, but not right now. So I got to evaluate, and I got to be able to beat them, at least to start my tenure here, with a lesser roster. I can do it. It has been done before. It will be done again. I want to be the one who does it. The third factor I went over Sunday night is the uh-oh factor. Accomplish with your job what Ole Miss accomplished when they hired Lane Kiffin. They made folks in Tuscaloosa and Baton Rouge and College Station and Starkville, Auburn, they made them say, uh-oh, when Kiffin was hired. No one predicted him to win a title, but everyone said, uh-oh. Make them say it in Knoxville and Gainesville and Athens and everywhere in between. Clemson, why not? Make them say, uh-oh, at the very least with your hire. Here's the 4th addition, the dream job factor. The more I think about it, the more I think it is so important with the South Carolina job. Think about what your biggest fear is, okay? Because right now, hit pause on what your biggest fear is and think about a program like Arkansas. Arkansas, I think we can universally agree, has been the most pleasant surprise maybe in all of college football so far this year. They've exceeded their win expectation, and that was with a win being taken away from them at Auburn. Search your heart, you know it to be true. What have we heard Sam Pittman say? Anytime someone's put a microphone in front of him, anytime he's been on SportsCenter, he says, this is my dream job. I don't care what anyone else thinks about Arkansas. What I think about Arkansas is this is the one job in America I'd want to have over any job. Who out there would think that about Carolina? Is it Billy Napier? Colin's showing you B-roll of Billy Napier at Louisiana right now. He has expressed interest very, very loudly in the past about this job. Everyone inside the industry has always heard that. Everyone assumed, therefore, as soon as Muschamp started not getting the job done this year, and Billy Napier, conversely, was getting the job done down there, it's only a matter of time. Maybe it is. But I think Shane Beamer fits that description too. So let's go back to the biggest fear thing now. Let's hit unpause. Let's hit play on the biggest fear. What would be really your biggest fear here? Carolina is not what I call a keystone program at this point. The keystones are the alpha programs, Texas, Georgia, Bama. In other words, Ohio State. No one's leaving those programs to go to a better college job. If they leave, they're either retiring or they're going to the NFL. Carolina's not at that level at this point. That's my opinion. Again, I led this by saying don't worry about what anyone else thinks, but as sure as I said that, that's probably reality right now with Carolina. Having said that, that is still a case-by-case basis. Your biggest fear would be someone comes in there And let's say they overachieve, and let's say they exceed everyone's wildest expectations. Well, that's not a fear. That's a fantasy. That's a fantasy become reality. But then what do you have to worry about? If it's typical, if you have a typical guy who comes in there, you got to worry about where he's going to leave you to go to. You got to worry about one of the big jobs coming open, and they're going to come and pluck him from Columbia. I think you need to find a guy where you don't necessarily have to worry about that. Find your guy, because this would be the true fantasy. Find the guy that is the supreme evaluator and leader, not just evaluator, but a leader of men, an evaluator of talent, a developer, a recruiter. Find someone who plays the style of ball you want to play, who has the uh-oh factor, but also 5 years down the road when he's turned over the program and you're a true contender in the East, doing things that no one ever thought Carolina football could do. Find that guy who checks all those boxes, and then when a major program, Michigan, Ohio State, LSU, I don't know, find someone who would look LSU dead in the eyes and say, no thanks, I'm happy at South Carolina. If you find that guy, it's worth all the pain and all the misery and all the swings and misses, and they haven't had many at Carolina, but I don't care. Even if you have had them, even if you've been, as our buddy Sherbert says over at the Big Spur, even if you've been out in the abyss, and Carolina's not in the abyss, maybe the wilderness, but not the abyss. There's an entire chart you need to accompany those terms. Even if you've been there, once you hit a home run, once you hit a grand slam, it's worth it. I mean, they had it all jumbled up, all a mess at Alabama for a long time. They swung and missed several times. They got a guy named Nick Saban, rest is history. So that's where we are with the Carolina coaching search right now. Really fascinated to see how that turns out, and really pulling for them to find the right hire according to their principles and criteria.